Hey guys, what's up? The purpose of making this video is to give you information and a brief about QuickBooks and its comparison with Tally. The manner in which this video is made is actually to first enter some transactions in Tally, and then correspondingly we can enter the same transactions in QuickBooks and then make a comparison of the same. So let's get started. This is part number 1 of a 10-part series that we start today of giving you insights about how QuickBooks can be used for accounting. So let's just start with this thing. Let's first quickly go to QuickBooks and see what it has on offer, and then we go back to Tally to put some entries here in Tally, and then we make a comparison between the two. So let's get started with QuickBooks. So when you open QuickBooks, this is a sample company that I've started. It gives you this, it throws you this option of dashboard and banking and sales and all these stuff. In dashboard, these are the options that get opened. These are get to know QuickBooks. These are some educational videos that QuickBooks guys have made, and then there are some information about finishing your profile. It generally gives you options to mention the address, the GST number, the email ID of your company, and of course it also gives you the option of setting up GST. We'll have a separate video for setting up GST. Under dashboard, you also get a brief overview of the incomes that you have. It gives you options of last 365 days or monthly and quarterly incomes, the expenses for this month and last 30 days this month, making comparison of last month, and so on and so forth. Also, it gives you this option of bank account details. There's a very wonderful option wherein bank accounts can get automatically connected to QuickBooks. It saves time. This is the option connecting accounts. We'll be having a separate video on that thing. And of course, it gives you a brief summary of the profit and loss account and sales accounts. So we'll be having separate videos for these. Let's just quickly run through all these options that QuickBooks shares, and then we can quickly switch on to Tally and then come back to QuickBooks and do the same thing as we did in Tally. So let's just run through these options. After dashboard, there is this option of banking. Now this banking primarily gives you the option of connecting your bank accounts or entering certain transactions manually. So this is the option of uploading transactions manually, wherein you can export and import transactions from Excel. And of course, it also gives you, this is the one of the highlights of QuickBooks, wherein you can simply click on one of these banks, or there are other bank account also available, wherein, say for example, if you have a bank account in ICICI Bank, just simply click here, log into your net banking, and all those entries from your net banking gets automatically mapped here in QuickBooks. So it saves lots of time of putting bank entries. We'll be having a separate video for this thing. Let's just quickly move on to sales. Sales primarily gives you these three options: all sales, which is primarily the summary of all the sales invoices that you've made, then this customer and products. Today's video will primarily focus on the sales part of QuickBooks. And of course, we'll be having separate videos for expenses, employees, reports, taxes, accounting, apps, and obviously the overall thing of QuickBooks, and of course the auditing part of it. Let's just quickly move on to expenses. Expenses gives you two options wherein you can put in all the expenses. This is primarily the debit part of the profit and loss account, and suppliers. The list of suppliers can be seen here, and it also gives you certain reports. Employees, primarily this is a separate function that QuickBooks offers. This is called paybooks. This is separately chargeable, and this primarily is the HR function. Then of course there are reports wherein lots of reports can be generated. There are some recommended reports, and there are obviously custom reports which are generated as a result of the entries that you pass in sales and expenses and employees. We'll be having a separate video covering this thing. Then of course there are taxes. For taxes, you will have a separate report for GST and service tax and VAT. Of course, you can also, in addition to mentioning taxes, you can also track your inventory and those details. So this is the overview, wherein the GST for a certain time period, say for example, July to July, can actually be seen here. So we'll be having a separate video regarding your GST. And there is accounting, which actually gives you the chart of accounts. Chart of accounts primarily is automatically populated in QuickBooks. I'm just quickly running through this thing. These accounts are actually already made. We'll be adding more accounts in this video, and in subsequent videos we'll be discussing about all these things in detail. And then there's of course the app, which you can download, and you can actually do all the accounting on the go. So let's just today focus only on the sales part of QuickBooks. How to put a sales entry, and how to track it, how to export transactions for sales, and how to receive sales entries. So before we switch on to first of all Tally, let's just go to a summary that I've made. So this is what it is. Any sales transaction that you want to enter in any accounting software, it primarily requires these 5 steps to be followed. One, you've got to decide what is the service that you are about to sell. Based on this service, you need to find a customer who will be availing this service. Now, based on this customer, you will be invoicing the customer, and you will be having a certain bank account. You will be informing this bank account to the customer, and then you can obviously receive the payments. So let's just complete all these 5 steps in Tally. So that it is easier. Of course, you will be knowing all these steps of how to enter these transactions in Tally, but let's just quickly go through it, and then we can correspondingly do all these transactions in QuickBooks. This should be the tab here, and we'll be trying to cover all these 3 options here, and then we make a comparison between Tally and QuickBooks so that things are easier to understand. So let's just go to step number 1. So let's just presume that the service that you sell is advertisement, online advertisement to your customers. Let's just quickly go to Tally, complete these 5 steps, and then come back to QuickBooks again. So this is a sample company that I've made in Tally. In Tally, of course, the first thing to be done is to decide the head of account for the service that you are offering. Say, for example, that service is advertisement service. So we go to accounts information, we go to ledgers, and we go to create, and we enter this thing, advertisement service, and this should be under the sales head. This is the sales head, and we enter and we accept it. So we have completed step number 1. So ideally what we have done is that we have created a ledger under which the service to be sold is booked. Second, we need a customer. So we again go back to Tally. We write, say, awesome customer, and customers are booked under sundry debtors, and we can quickly accept it. So we've completed step number 2. Now we need to invoice the customer. So again we go back to Tally, and this is where it is, accounting voucher. So we just randomly put a date. It's say 1st of April 2016, and sales are to be booked. This is F8, and we enter it as a voucher, and this is what happens. So the entry that we have to put in Tally is, say, customer account debit. That is awesome customer. Say, for example, the value is 10,000, and we just quickly go through this thing. And income that we book is advertisement income. So 10,000 rupees sales for the month of April 2016, and we accept it. So by passing that entry, we've invoiced the customer. Now, of course, we need to have a bank account and receive the payment. So what we do is that we go back to accounts information, ledgers, create, and we write, say, Bank of Delhi, and we put it under the bank account, and we accept it. Now again we go back to putting the entry. So this is accounting voucher, and we receive the payment. So we press F6, and say, for example, on 31st of March 2017 we have to receive the payment. It is from, say, awesome customer. The value was 10,000, and we receive this thing in Bank of Delhi, 10,000. So we say payment from customer, say white check number, say 101, and we accept it. So what we've done is that we've actually completed all these 5 steps. Now what we want to do is that we want to do all these 5 steps just like we did in Tally in QuickBooks now. So let's just quickly go through, switch over to QuickBooks. So after you log in, you go to sales. In sales, the first step that we have to do is to decide on the product and service that you're offering. You may remember that in Tally, we were offering a service by the name of advertisement service. So you go to new, and you can actually sell inventory, non-inventory. You go to this service, and we can write advertisement service, just like this, like creating a new ledger like we did in Tally. So this is advertisement service. The good part is that the SAC code, that is, it is already integrated with GST. So you simply got to use the drop down menu, and we write advertisement. So we go to this thing, advertisement income, and it automatically picks up the SAC code. And then you can mention what tax rate is applicable to your company. Currently we'll for ease we'll ignore that part. In subsequent videos, of course, we'll be covering that part as well. So we go forward and save and close. So what happens here is that this new service gets created, and the SAC code is mentioned, and you can obviously edit it later on. Now this is step number 1 completed. We've already created the service. Now we need to create a customer. So we go back to QuickBooks, we go to this head. This is customer. There are no customers currently. So you simply got to click here, new customer, and we write, say, awesome customer 10. The very good part here is that you can mention all these details here, awesome customers, phone number, email ID. The good part is that in case you mention the email ID, then later on when you make an invoice, you can simply press the email ID button and the invoice can be emailed to the customer. In addition to this thing, there's also another important thing here, that is tax info. In case you write the GST number of the customer, then what happens is that at the time of service tax or the GST return filing, you'll find it very easy to determine which customer has GST number and to which customer do you have to give GST credit. So it actually saves time at that time. So it's always beneficial to write the customer name, the email ID, and the GST number. So we click on save. So once we click on save, this thing is saved, and we have completed step number 2 here, wherein the customer is also added. Now we have to invoice the customer. So we go back to QuickBooks again. This is the awesome customer added. So we go to sales entry, and this customer details should be mentioned here. This is what it is. So now there's an option of going here, all sales, and you can create an invoice. So this is the important part. This is step number 3 that we are invoicing the customer. So you can choose a customer. Oh, there it is. Awesome customer number 10. It simply pops up. This is the email ID. Now the email ID that you mention here, you can whenever you write and click this option, save and send. Now this email automatically gets sent to this customer's email ID. So it saves time of downloading the invoice and then later on sending it. So it saves that time. So it's always preferable to write this email ID. Then you can write the address, and this is already integrated here. Whichever state that you select, depending on which state, the IGST or the CGST and the SGST part are automatically picked up. So that's a good thing. Then the invoice date, say for example, we can say it was 11th of September, and we are giving him a 30-day credit. So net 30. So that is how it is. Now for ease, we are keeping it out of scope of tax. Of course, you can either include or exclude the tax. So say for example, if your service is 10,000 rupees and if you want to exclude it, so tax will be added over and above 10,000, or if it is inclusive of tax, then tax will be back calculated from 10,000 rupees. So currently, just for the ease of it, of course in subsequent videos we'll be covering that thing, but just for the ease of it, we are keeping it out of scope of tax. Now what product and service? Now the good part is that if you drop it down, you can actually see that this advertisement service that we created in step number 1 is already arising here, and here you can mention the advertisement service for the month of April 2016. So you can write any description here, and of course you can edit the rate, and in case you mention the tax amount or set up the GST, now the GST will be added over and above, but for this video we are not considering the GST part. So you simply go to save and close. This gets saved. This is wonderful, and this is what it shows. So with this we have completed invoicing of the customer. Now we need to receive the payment. Now what happens is that there are 2 options to receive the payment. One, you simply go to the all sales account and see, okay, this customer has actually made the payment. So you simply got to click here. Or there's another option that opens up. This is a very important part of it. If you click on this icon here, it throws up all these options. Now all these options are very similar to the tally option, this option. So all the masters in tally, that is all the ledgers that you have, all the accounting transactions, or any transaction that you want to do, this is what this menu talks about. So in case you want to invoice the customer, you can actually invoice it from here, or you want to receive the payment, or you want to issue an estimate. Before you want to invoice it, you want to send an estimate, and credit note, debit notes, and all these things. Similarly, in the supplier part, we'll be covering this thing in the subsequent videos. But say for example, if you want to enter an expense, in case you want to issue a check, in case you receive a bill and you want to pay the bill, then there are these HR activity wherein work weekly timesheets and the single time activity can be covered. And of course, there are these journal entries of shifting balance from one account to another, then bank deposits and inventory adjustments. So just for the ease of it, this is the invoice outstanding. It states open. We simply got to press here, receive the payment. So this thing opens up. Okay, we remember that. Okay, awesome customer number 10, again the email ID. By mentioning this email ID, what happens is that you will be able to send a receipt. Once the customer makes the payment, you can send a receipt. Now it was very simple in the sense that since there was only one transaction, so we can simply see this invoice number here, or you can actually also search. So I remember that it was invoice number 1003, so simply find it and this invoice throws up here. So say for example, he paid 10,000 rupees and the check number drop down, check number was 101, and you can currently deposit and undeposited funds. So say for example, you can also open a new tab here or a new account here, add new, and you can add your bank account. So for the time being, what I'm doing is that I'm just putting it in undeposited funds account. All these accounts are already made in QuickBooks. It's like in Tally, in case you go forward and see the masters, you go to ledgers and you go to display. Now these accounts are already there. Similarly in groups, these accounts are already there. So very similarly, all these accounts and groups of current assets are already there. It mentions about GST, IGST and all that stuff, TDS receivable. So we simply got to deposit the funds in undeposited account. Later on, of course, you can shift it to any bank account that you can open. So what you need to do is simply put 10,000 rupees and press save and close. And you receive the payment. So what happens now is that with this we have completed step number 5 as well. Let's just go back to QuickBooks and see. So this is the summary of the transaction that we've done. Step 1, we created a certain service that we were offering. Step 2, we created a customer. These are the list of our debtors. And then from the debtors, we raised an invoice. This was the invoice. You can obviously print an invoice, you can resend, you can send reminders and so on and so forth. Now automatically this status is updated. It shows paid. And once you receive the payment, it says the status is closed. So this is how the transaction happens. The good part is that all this transaction, if you go, in case you go back to Tally, let's just quickly see the profit and loss account. So it says, okay, 10,000 rupees of sales. Wonderful. So let's go back to QuickBooks. In case you go to reports, it throws up these options. Under profit and loss account, you can simply run this report. And this report says service income of 10,000 rupees. The good part is that you can click here and you can actually find out from which customer. All these are clickable links. You can actually go forward to this customer's ledger and find out which invoice was paid. Now the good part is that, say for example, if you've got a recurring invoice, you simply use this button, make recurring, and every month this invoice goes. Or you can see the preview of the invoice that you've sent. So you can actually download it in PDF and send it separately also. So once you update all this information, the logo will show up, the GST details will show up, and it automatically has a impression that it is paid. So it actually saves lots of time. And obviously you can go to customers here, and this is the customer here. All the list of the customers will show up here. You can export this data to Excel. You can print it. You can have multiple fields or multiple columns to it. You can import customers from Excel. Let's just quickly run you through some other features here as well. This is called company settings. This is important. This is the first time setup of your company. You can actually put up a logo here. You can change the name. You can mention the email IDs here, the accounting number, the PAN card, the SIN, the categories of income. For the sales, of course, you can mention what is the payment delivery, the shipping details, any discount that you offer. SKUs can be mentioned. SKUs like a group or a bouquet of services. Any message or default message that you want to enter to the email IDs. You can send reminders. There's online deliveries. In the expense part, of course, that we'll be covering that part. Expense is slightly difficult in QuickBooks, but it actually has very good reports. You can use all these options by switching them on or off. And of course, there's the advanced option which sets up the financial year, the chart of accounts. Chart of accounts is primarily this list that we talked about in Tally, this master list of groups. These are the chart of accounts that are already there in QuickBooks. And of course, there are pre-filled form options, this time tracking sheet. You can have multi-currency options here. and their preferences. The good part is that you can actually change the date format, or you can actually also change the number of the invoices. That is the invoice number. It can be either automatic. Let's just close this thing. Then there are other options, of course, managing users, and you can change the form styles. The chart of accounts is the list of accounts that you have. Then the products and the services part. Then you can import data, budgeting and reconciling. There are audit logs that are created. Let's just quickly go through the custom form styles. This is important because this is a standard thing that they make. So say for example, this is a sample invoice that you have, and you want to add a few things. Say for example, you want to change this thing. You go to content, and you want to add a few fields. So you simply click on this thing, and all these options throw up. In case you want to add a mobile number or a phone number, you simply click here, you mention the mobile number, and it shows up here. Then you can add the SIN number of the company, the address, the websites. So all these fields can actually be customized. That is a good part. I'm just simply closing this thing. So that is what it is regarding the sales thing. So this is very similar to Tally. The reason of opening Tally alongside was to simply give you an overview, because we are far more comfortable using Tally. In the subsequent videos, we'll be covering all these other tabs, and of course the audit logs here and the other heads of accounts here. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching.